Guys, it's Miss Clark. I'm going to be showing you, we're going to be doing the reading lesson for, it's supposed to be for May 18th, but this is May 19th when you're seeing this video. So we're going to do chapters 1 and 2. I know at the beginning of the year we already read this book, but I mean, it's pretty fun. So this is what we're reading. So you need this packet, okay, and you need this literature guide. Okay, so you need both of these during this lesson. Okay, so it says, I can answer questions by referring to the text. I can describe a character using their actions and motivations. Okay, so as we read each chapter, you will be asked to describe the character and write about them on their character card. We will also look at the questions before we read to get fireworks. So let's look at our questions. The first one says, what does Mrs. Gorf turn children into when she is upset with them? Okay, and then number 2, how does she do it? And then number 3, what does Lewis accidentally do at the end of the chapter? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this to you, and I want you to follow along with me. You can write in it. It's your own copy. So this is for you, okay? So this is called Sideways Stories from Wayside School. All right, so chapter 1, Mrs. Gorf. We're going to do chapter 1 first, okay? So you should be on this page with me. Don't forget, you can pause the video whenever you want to. Mrs. Gorf had a long tongue and pointed ears. She was the meanest teacher in Wayside School. She taught the class on the 30th story. If you children are bad, she warned, or if you answer a problem wrong, I'll wiggle my ears, stick out my tongue, and turn you into apples. Mrs. Gorf didn't like children, but she loved apples. Joe couldn't add. He couldn't even count. But he knew that if he answered a problem wrong, he would be turned into an apple. So he copied from John. He didn't like to cheat, but Mrs. Gorf had never taught him how to add. One day, Mrs. Gorf caught Joe copying John's paper. So she wiggled her ears, first her right, then her left, stuck out her tongue, and turned Joe into an apple. Then she turned John into an apple for letting Joe cheat. Hey, that isn't fair, said Todd. John was only trying to help a friend. Mrs. Gorf wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left, stuck out her tongue, and turned Todd into an apple. Does anybody else have an opinion? She asked. Nobody said a word. Mrs. Gorf laughed and placed the 3 apples on her desk. Stephen started to cry. He couldn't help it. He was scared. I do not allow crying in the classroom, said Mrs. Gorf. She wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left, stuck out her tongue, and turned Stephen into an apple. For the rest of the day, the children were absolutely quiet, and when they went home, they were too scared to talk to their parents. But Joe, John, Todd, and Stephen couldn't go home. Mrs. Gorf just left them on her desk. Okay, so we just finished this page. Let's go ahead and turn the page. They were able to talk to each other, but they didn't have much to say. Their parents were very worried. They didn't know where their children were. Nobody seemed to know. The next day, Kathy was late for school. As soon as she walked in, Mrs. Gorf turned her into an apple. Paul sneezed during class. He was turned into an apple. Nancy said, God bless you, when Paul sneezed. Mrs. Gorf wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left, stuck out her tongue, and turned Nancy into an apple. Terence fell out of his chair. He was turned into an apple. Maricia tried to run away. She was halfway to the door as Mrs. Gorf's right ear began to wiggle. When she reached the door, Mrs. Gorf's left ear wiggled. Maricia opened the door and had one foot outside when Mrs. Gorf stuck out her tongue. Maricia became an apple. Mrs. Gorf picked up the apple from the floor and put it on her desk with the others. Then a funny thing happened. Mrs. Gorf turned around and fell over a piece of chalk. The 3 Erics laughed. They were turned into apples. Mrs. Gorf had a dozen apples on her desk. Joe, John, Todd, Stephen, Kathy, Paul, Nancy, Terrence, Mauricia, and the three Erics, Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and Eric Ovens. Lewis, the art teacher, walked into the classroom. He had missed the children at recess. He had heard that Mrs. Gorf was a mean teacher. So he came up to investigate. He saw the 12 apples on Mrs. Gorf's desk. I must be wrong, he thought. She must be a good teacher if so many children bring her apples. He walked back down to the playground. The next day, a dozen more children were turned into apples. Lewis, the art teacher, came back into the room. He saw 24 apples on Mrs. Gorf's desk. There were only 3 children left in the class. She must be the best teacher in the world, he thought. By the end of the week, all of the children were apples. Mrs. Gorf was very happy. Now I can go home, she said. I don't have to teach anymore. I won't have to walk up 30 flights of stairs ever again. You're not going anywhere, shouted Todd. He jumped off the desk and bopped Mrs. Gorf on the nose. The rest of the apples followed. Mrs. Gorf fell on the floor. The apples jumped all over her. Stop, she shouted, or I'll turn you into applesauce. But the apples didn't stop, and Mrs. Gorf could do nothing about it. Turn us back into children, Todd demanded. Mrs. Gorf had no choice. She stuck out her tongue, wiggled her ears, this time her left one, then her right, and turned the apples back into children. All right, said Mauricia, let's go get Lewis. He'll know what to do. No, screamed Mrs. Gorf. I'll turn you back into apples. She wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left, and stuck out her tongue. But Jenny held up a mirror, and Mrs. Gorf turned herself into an apple. The children didn't know what to do. They didn't have a teacher. Even though Mrs. Gorf was mean, they didn't think it was right to leave her as an apple, but none of them knew how to wiggle their ears. Lewis, the art teacher, walked in. Where's Mrs. Gorf? He asked. Nobody said a word. Boy, am I hungry, said Lewis. I didn't think Mrs. Gorf would mind if I ate this apple. After all, she already has so many. He picked up the apple, which was really Mrs. Gorf, shined it up on his shirt, and ate it. All right, so we finished that page. Now, let's look at the questions. Go ahead and write these down in your literature guide. So we've got Mrs. Gorf. We're doing the character cards pretty soon. Wow, lots of characters. Okay, so let's look at this page where it says Chapter 1, Mrs. Gorf. Okay, so go ahead and answer those questions about Mrs. Gorf. I'll read them again. What does Mrs. Gorf turn children into when she is upset with them? Number 2, how does she do it? And number 3, what does Lewis accidentally do at the end of the chapter? Okay, go ahead and answer that. And then I want you to do a character card on Mrs. Gorf. I want you to draw her picture and maybe write a little description. Okay, description's like a little sentence about her. All right, now that you've done all that for Chapter 1, now let's do Chapter 2, Mrs. Jules. So, first question is, why are Mrs. Jules and the children afraid of each other? And number 2, why does Mrs. Jules think the children are, what does Mrs. Jules think the children are when she walks into the classroom? Okay, so, here we go. I'm going to read Chapter 2. So, now I'm on this page right here. Okay, so follow along with me, and you can mark in this book. Mrs. Jules had a terribly nice face. She stood at the bottom of Wayside School and looked up. She was supposed to teach the class on the 30th story. Children on the 30th story were scared. They had never told anybody what had happened to Mrs. Gorf. They hadn't had a teacher for 3 days. They were afraid of what their new teacher would be like. They had heard she'd be a terribly nice teacher. They had never had a nice teacher. They were terribly afraid of nice teachers. Mrs. Jules walked up the winding, creaking staircase to the 30th story. She was also afraid. She was afraid of the children. She had heard that there would be horribly cute children. She'd never taught cute children. She was horribly afraid of cute children. She opened the door to the classroom. She was terribly nice. The children could tell just by looking at her. Mrs. Jules looked at the children. They were horribly cute. In fact, they were much too cute to be children. I don't believe it, said Mrs. Jules. It's a room full of monkeys. The children looked at each other. They didn't see any monkeys. This is ridiculous, said Miss Jules. Just ridiculous. I walked all the way up 30 flights of stairs for nothing but a class of monkeys. What do they think I am? I'm a teacher, not a zookeeper. The children looked at her. They didn't know what to say. Todd scratched his head. Oh, I'm sorry, said Miss Jules. Please don't get me wrong. I have nothing against monkeys. It's just that I was expecting children. I like monkeys. I really do. Why, I'm sure we can play all kinds of monkey games. What are you talking about? Asked Todd. Miss Jules nearly fell off her chair. Well, what do you know? A talking monkey. Tomorrow I'll bring you a banana. My name is Todd, said Todd. The children were flabbergasted. They all raised their hands. I'm sorry, said Mrs. Jules, but I don't have enough bananas for all of you. I didn't expect this. Next week I'll bring in a whole bushel. I don't want a banana, said Calvin. I'm not a monkey. Would you like a peanut? Asked Mrs. Jules. I think I might have a bag of peanuts in my purse. Wait a second. Yes, here it is. Thanks, said Calvin. Calvin liked peanuts. Allison stood up. I'm not a monkey, she said. I'm a girl. My name is Allison, and so is everybody else. Mrs. Jules was shocked. Do you mean to tell me that every monkey in here is named Allison? No, said Jenny. She means we are all children. My name is Jenny. No, said Mrs. Jules. You're much too cute to be children. Jason raised his hand. Yes, said Mrs. Jules, the chimpanzee in the red shirt. My name is Jason, said Jason, and I'm not a chimpanzee. You're too small to be a gorilla, said Mrs. Jules. I'm a boy, said Jason. You're not a monkey? Asked Mrs. Jules. No, said Jason. And the rest of the class, they're not monkeys either? Asked Mrs. Jules. No, said Allison. That is what we've been trying to tell you. Are you sure? Asked Mrs. Jules. We'd know if we were monkeys, wouldn't we? Asked Calvin. I don't know, said Miss Jules. Do monkeys know that they are monkeys? I don't know, said Allison. I'm not a monkey. No, I suppose you're not, said Miss Jules. Okay, in that case, we have a lot of work to do. Reading, writing, subtraction, addition, spelling. Everybody take out a piece of paper. We will have a test now. Jason tapped Todd on the shoulder. He said, Do you want to know something? I liked it better when she said she thought we were monkeys. I know, said Todd. I guess now it means she won't bring me a banana. There will be no talking in class, said Mrs. Jules. She wrote Todd's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. So there we are. We finished this page. And now the next video I'll do, we'll have chapters 3 and 4. But first, let's look at the character card. So it says, Mrs. Jules is a nice teacher and thinks they are too cute to be children. So you're going to draw that. You're going to draw Mrs. Jules. Wrong book. You're going to draw Mrs. Jules on the character card and write that sentence. And don't forget, we have these questions that are on page... This page right here, it says 518. So chapter 2 says, why are Mrs. Jules and the children afraid of each other? And then what does Mrs. Jules think the children are when she walks into the classroom? So I want you to answer these and have them ready for our Google Meet today. Okay? So, and I also want to see your character cards. All right. On your exit ticket, it says Mrs. Gorf and Mrs. Jules are opposites. Use details from the text to support this opinion. So put this on the question page. Maybe squeeze it in down here, down at the bottom. Okay? So, I hope you enjoyed the first 2 chapters of Sideways Stories from Wayside School. And I hope you have a good day, and I will see you at our Google Meet. Bye.